Today's conversation sits at the heart of what I care about most in Africa is fintech, practical inclusion that actually works on the ground, not a slide, not a slogan. Rails people can use even when data is expensive or smartphones isn't an option. Welcome to Beyond the Board, the show where we dive into the minds of founders and operators shaping Africa's future. I am Ala Umar. My guest today is Renen Watermeyer, the CEO of SASA Solutions, a platform building mobile based financial ecosystems across USSD, SMS, WhatsApp, and other apps. What I love
Very
about
pleased.
SASA is simple. They're not choosing a channel, they're choosing the customer. And that means reaching the farmer with the feature phone and the trader who lives in WhatsApp. Same platform, same quality, same dignity. Today, we'll explore Renan's journey, the tough trade offs, the quiet innovations that unlock scale across fragmented market. Renan, welcome to Beyond the Board.
Very pleased to be here. Very excited, as you probably gathered from my interjection.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. Before SASA, before the acronyms, the partnerships, who were you? Paint me a picture of the early experiences that quietly nudged you towards building financial rails.
I think it's exactly that. My first formative role involved building financial online trading platforms. So that got me quite heavily involved in accounting. The only course I really failed at university was accounting. So to find myself in an environment which at its core was about accounting was quite curious. We built an online trading platform that was probably 30 years ago. One thing led to another, and I found myself working some years later in East Africa, building loan products or loan management platforms. And one thing led to another, and I found myself here. So those loan management platforms, perhaps just to kind of add a bit more color, are obviously built on accounting. One's got to account for interest, provide statements to customers, and so forth. So at their core, a sophisticated loan management solution will rest on a sophisticated accounting platform. Now, I'm not sure that our accounting is necessarily that sophisticated, but it's very much focused on operational accounting, communicating. And I think that thread is what's kind of run through my whole career and led me to this point. So despite failing accounting, the destiny has clearly been increasingly in that direction. And indeed, to this day, the key differentiator of SASA is that we are a transactional platform. We're about making sure that we manage the purchase of products, the supply of products to people, and the payment of farmers. In the agricultural context, it's about managing accounting. Many of our customers wouldn't stand up and say, hey, SASA is an accounting platform. We're not that. But we are a financial transaction platform. And in that sense, yeah, that's the thread that has run through my career that's got me to this point.
And
I
and
don't know if
what's
that's the answer you were expecting.
take us through like what does SASA do right now in South Africa and how many countries do you operate on?
Yeah, we operate in about 13 countries. South Africa is not the one to focus on because the products tend to be, for a range of reasons, financially focused. We provide API solutions for financial products. Our most interesting work is in the agricultural space, where we deal with managing farmers, so mostly outgrowers in many sectors of the agricultural space are built on contract farming. So what happens is Tabasco, for example, to use a famous brand, has thousands of smallholder farmers who grow chilies for them. Now they are aggregated through what they call outgrowers. So in Malawi, you'll have a chili outgrower who contracts 50, 60, 200, whatever smallholder farmers, somebody with a kind of patch of chilies out back. The outgrower will provide services to the farmer, for example, advice, inputs, etc., to help that farmer succeed. At the end of the season, the farmer will supply the produce back to the outgrower, who will then pass it back along to Tabasco. We help manage that kind of value chain. We help make sure that that all works the way it's supposed to. If you provide the farmer with inputs, seeds, fertilizers, that is managed and set, that loan is settled at the end of the process against the value that is delivered. So whether it's the milk industry, whether it's chilies, we help manage that kind of inputs go to the farmer, the smallholder farmer, and produce comes back to the center. And that is, as you can see, it's like fundamentally a financial kind of process. So
Yeah,
it doesn't manifest as that. When somebody delivers a bale of straw or a ton of fertilizer, that doesn't necessarily feel like a financial transaction, but it's actually really powerful to capture that as a financial transaction.
absolutely right. And what was the first time you thought, obviously, like what you're saying now, that there are people who might be in different areas? You mentioned farmers that are maybe in terms of technology, they're not really savvy when it comes to apps or loan processes, etc. So, what was the first time you thought, if we keep designing products for ideal customers, we will keep excluding real people?
So I would never have expected to be building solutions for farmers. In fact, I'm probably the worst person for that because I have relatively little farming in my DNA. But it's much. It became apparent, I think, in our work in. Well, we got asked, can we help pay farmers in Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe was having a currency crisis, and at Chile Arco, as it happens, said to us, can you help us manage this problem? That was the basis of this journey because they had a very real, tangible financial problem. We at that stage were mostly focused on pure play financial products, insurance, savings, loans, things like that, and mostly in a mobile money context. At the same time, we had a project running with the Anglican Church of Tanzania, where we were helping them manage community based savings processes. Most emerging markets have at their core savings groups where people get together as a community, save as a community, and lend to each other. It's the bedrock of financial services across a massive fraction of the world. We were
Yes.
helping those groups manage themselves, and we still do that. Most of those communities are rooted in agricultural contexts. So two things came together at once. We're managing savings groups and communities in agricultural contexts, and we're helping solve the problem of paying farmers in a peculiar currency context. Those two things have merged together. We now find ourselves in a situation where we do that as our bread and butter. It's much more rewarding than pure financial products. We are solving real problems for real people in real places that they are by through circumstances that are well beyond them. They have no, that they can't control. One of the key things holding the third world back is that productivity of farmers is really low. We are actively impacting that process, actively trying to make farmers more productive, not through education, not through giving them hugs, by actually making sure that their processes work coherently, sensibly, and in a financially sustainable manner.
Practical solutions.
Yeah.
This is very interesting because, as I mentioned at the start, looking at SASA and what you guys have done, reaching people where they are and accommodating them in terms of needs and access to that financial support in terms of suppliers, etc. But what were the challenges at the beginning? And how did
So
you overcome them through products?
if I ask a random South African developer to create a agricultural solution for me, they're almost certainly going to pick up want to do it for an Apple phone. There's a significant disconnect between your average Apple phone user and a farmer in the back of Malawi. The context is so vastly different that you can't take an iPhone app and give it to the farmer in Malawi. Now, that bridging that gap is from a technical perspective, from a process perspective, has probably been kind of a big part of our journey. You have to deliver solutions to people that are culturally applicable, relevant in a in language that is familiar. You've got to use Chichewa in Malawi, Spanish in Colombia. You have to use Swahili in East Africa. So and you have to use the technologies that are relevant in a large part of East Africa. That's still USSD. So make it work in USSD. Technologists want, particularly programmers, want the big flashy things. They want to be doing, working on MacBook Pros. They want to be coding in Swift and doing the latest, greatest LLM stuff. But actually, a practical solution is not necessarily grounded in that high value world. You need to deliver stuff using much older technologies. And the systems and the solutions and the support structure are not there for that. So you actually have to build those as well. To manage USSD journeys properly, you need a bunch of tools. They're not, they don't exist with any of the sophistication of Shopify or platforms like that. You have to build the tools yourself. And once you've got those, you can start dealing with the localization stuff properly. But that is another problem because I don't speak to Chichewa. So, and what's worse, in South Africa, we barely use USSD. I need to figure out a way to test my stuff properly. So there's a whole bunch of stuff which goes into kind of bridging the gap from my ivory tower to a field in Kenya.
Mhm. Not just apps, but and solutions. Also, you're making an impact into these farmers and making their life easier.
And we have to approach them. You used the word dignity at the beginning, right? We have to make sure that we approach them in a dignified manner, eyeball to eyeball. You can't go in there like you have to provide them with the respect that is due to them and appropriate to all humans. And that means delivering solutions that are applicable and relevant to those people. So back to USSD. If you are a farmer in East Africa and you have really terrible internet connectivity and lousy electricity, we need to be speaking to you in Swahili via USSD. And that means we must make our systems work that way. It's not about, I can't tell you to get an iPad and access our platform via an iPad. If I'm going to make a difference to your world, approach you, in a way that is culturally relevant to you. Then that starts to change how you think about everything. Once you've got that internalized, well, actually, we need developers in East Africa. Our team is now scattered across East Africa and speak Swahili and whatever. That's right, because it's their communities that are using these solutions. It's critically important that everything we do is structured around delivering solutions. We've got to keep those rural people close to our processes and our team ethos. That means having people who are close to those communities in our team.
It's a very inclusive approach that you've taken. And
It doesn't work otherwise.
what did you underestimate? What did you get wrong? And what did that teach you about scale in the continent or in the countries that you're operating on?
I think I've probably got it wrong. What's much harder than I think anybody appreciates is the lack of skills in the markets that we operate in. That manifests not just at an infrastructure level where the electricity is bad and the internet's bad, it manifests at delivering products, like putting it on a truck and getting it shipped across the country. That's difficult. Because that's difficult, the farmers can't buy it through a platform because they're going to buy from whoever's going past. They're not going to know the order's going to arrive. So there's a massive kind of gap between what when you order something on Amazon, it arrives tomorrow morning. There's a massive gap between the world that I inhabit mostly and the world that our solutions are deployed in. It means that there's a lack of skills to roll out, to train agents. There's a lack of skill to make sense of data. There's a lack of skills to keep things working properly. Skills is definitely a problem still. It's changing. The youth, the 30-year-olds are ambitious, competent, and better educated. But it takes time for that to permeate through society. And I think we struggle with that a lot. That's the hardest part about doing business where we do business.
And how do you reach the customers? Like, how do you find the customers that need those solutions?
Poorly. So SASA as a business entity has a challenge. It's reaching the market mostly through word of mouth, through conferences, through people we meet, through our network. We haven't been spectacularly successful at sales. Hopefully this changes that.
Right. Yeah, but I'm not sure if it will change it because right now I'm talking about those in particular who are using, for example, USSD, right?
Our customers are not the farmers. Our customers are
Yeah,
the outgrowers. The outgrowers have processes for onboarding, finding farmers and contracting with them and so forth.
right.
We
So that's their
facilitate that. We
responsibility.
manage the
Okay.
contract. That's their responsibility. Our challenge is finding the outgrowers and scaling our business at a pace that matches. If we take on another outgrower, I've got to know that I've got the resources to be able to support them and to make stuff happen. So that's but finding the outgrowers who are able to help. That's kind of the challenge. So
How do you reach out to them right now?
one-on-one, either via introductions or so we're not like Salesforce or some giant business like that. It's a much more kind of intimate approach. We have to work with processes that are pre-established. If you are delivering chilies in crates or you're delivering milk via motorcycles, we need to understand that process and work with that. It's quite difficult for us to have a one size fits all solution, which means the whole kind of engagement process is a little slower, a little more considered, which I think also implies that our sales approach is more considered and a little slower, if that makes sense.
Yes. And on data and insight, can you see a customer's journey across, the USSD, SMS, WhatsApp, and other apps in one view? And how do you piece it all
Absolutely.
together?
Yeah. And then there's also kind of human contact. So There's USD and WhatsApp, obviously, and SMS and so forth, and apps. But also, frequently, we will engage with the farmers through a field agent, somebody who goes to the farmer, talks to them, helps them, records what they see, records recommendations. We provide those agents with tools which they use to do that. And then, of course, we pull it all back into a web-based platform, which then allows business, the outgrower, to manage and understand what's going past. So yeah, so it's basically a web based console that has a slew of reports that are kind of, we pick the reports to match the, reports for milk delivery are not the same as milk as reports for chili farmers. We pick and match the reports to what people are after. Also, once we understand, that data that we get about the farmer leads to two really, really critical outcomes. One, we can start helping with productivity because we can provide data around the field. We can provide satellite imagery of the field where the farmer lives. There's a distinct and immediate benefit to the outgrower. The relationship between the farmer and the outgrower is no longer mediated by an agent, because often the outgrowers never go anywhere near the farmers because there's logistical problems to getting there. If the agent disappeared, often the relationship between the outgrower and the farmer vaporized. Because it's now in a system, you can send another agent to that field and say, hey, we're still here. We do quite a lot on that side of the equation. The other really critical thing, and probably the bigger thing, is that the farmer suddenly has a digital existence. They have a financial profile that they can leverage, that we can present to banks. So we in some contexts, provide statements that are bank approved, that are generated for a bank. So the farmer can take that statement to a bank and go, hey, I exist beyond just standing in front of you. Here's my transaction history. So suddenly you're able to facilitate a financial, you can bring that farmer into the financial system in a much more formal sense. And that's really powerful because suddenly the farmer goes from being, just somebody without a bank, they become banked in a almost Western sense. So yeah, that's
It is, no, it's powerful. And then that will help them eventually if they're looking to grow their business or they're looking for extra funding, they'll be able to approach the bank for that.
yeah. Or even more simply, they just need to pay their school fees. So
Mm.
then the bank can understand better and make a more considered decision with a more positive outcome. So we work quite a lot, for example, with Standard Bank across East Africa. They use our data to make intelligent financial decisions with the farmer.
And then do you see a literacy gap or an education gap for farmers on the ground to understand more about business, more about finance, more about applications when it comes to loans? How are you? Would that be your responsibility to help them bridge that gap, or would you signpost them, for instance, to
So
grow?
I think there's a misconception that just because somebody is illiterate or relatively uneducated, that they are unable to understand the financial products, loans, how to grow their business, et cetera, et cetera. I think they do. I think farmers, even if they're totally illiterate, are quite able to generally make the right and the most effective decisions to drive themselves forward. We just try to make that process happen more
Smoother.
accessibly and smoother. It does imply that you can't rely on literacy. I cannot give somebody a 5-page contract. I must make that accessible to them, and I must communicate in Swahili or whatever it is. You've got to communicate in a culturally relevant manner, in a channel, in a modality that is appropriate to the human that you're talking to. It requires effort, but it means that you go back to that dignity thing. If you approach this from a dignified perspective, and you assume that people are able to make the right decision, just empowering them and making sure that you communicate, full stop, when they can succeed.
You're absolutely right. And I think my point was around, for example, processes and loan applications, business plans. When someone is trying to grow, they would seek knowledge to understand what they need to do, how much money this will require, how many staff, etc. What equipments do I need in this farm? So will there be support there?
The challenge is actually not quite that. The challenge is the farmer knows he needs fertilizer.
Mm.
The challenge is getting that fertilizer to him, enabling him to pay for it, making sure it's the right fertilizer, and then subsequently making sure that the outgrower knows that that product is still safe because it wasn't a toxic fertilizer that's been applied to the field. Dealing with the traceability, it's facilitating. The farmer knows what he needs to be a successful farmer. He probably grew up on the farm. He knows what he needs. The difficulty is providing with allowing him to affect that, to get what he actually to actually buy the stuff he needs, or to get the financing that he knows he needs. It's not an education process about telling the farmer he needs a loan. It's more about making sure that he can get the loan, if that makes sense.
You're getting more into the inclusion bit deeper and deeper because the way you're approaching this is by exactly how they want to be treated, and then you just follow exactly what they need in terms of
How would I want? What would I want if I was there?
yes, from that perspective. And I think Renan, that's powerful.
Yeah,
That's powerful.
yeah. No, I think it will. This it's coming, right? We're going to get this right. There's a lot of change slowly taking root across Africa. That is phenomenal. The roads are getting better. The infrastructure is getting better. There's internet more widely available, etc. So yeah, definitely happening.
Looking at the countries that you're operating on right now, what is working right now in Africa that does not get enough credit?
Mobile money. Unfortunately, that's not something that I can credit for. The fact that you can transact with anybody south of the Sahara, probably north of the Sahara as well. The fact that anybody can send money to anybody at any moment in real time is mind blowing. We all got Apple Pay now in the West. Not that I'm in the West, but here we live in cashless societies where you just tap to pay and so forth. Africa's been ahead on that front for years. It's what allows us to do what we do. It's facilitating a massive fraction of the growth that we see. The milk farmer delivers his milk. We pay the farmer by M-Pesa. That ability to transact is phenomenal. If you haven't been in East Africa and now West Africa, it's hard to understand how staggeringly impactful it is. Yeah, I don't know about easy, but certainly impactful. It's expensive. Like the mobile networks are clearly in this for profit, but by the same token, it's you can pay
Solves
somebody
problems.
15 US cents, and yeah, that's feasible, right? We can do that, and that's really tremendous.
But there's still a bigger problem, which is cross border money within Africa.
I think it's less of a problem than you think. I think there is a big diaspora. For example, in South Africa, there's a massive amount of money that moves out of South Africa back to Zimbabwe or wherever. But certainly in the environments we operate in, it's mostly within territories. We're not in the cross-border payments business. I need to pay the farmer for the milk he delivered this morning. That doesn't require cross-border stuff. Frankly, there are quite a lot of cross-border solutions around. That landscape has changed a lot. It's not something that I'm familiar with in an intimate sense. I'm aware of it, but it's not our cup of tea. We are about if you're going to, if I'm going to pay that farmer for the milk he delivered, do I need to offset any loans, or has he bought stuff that needs to be offset against that? Then once the accountant approves, we pay him. That's the kind of flow we're trying to smooth out. When we deliver seed to a chili farmer, did he get it? Has he got the right seed? What's he applied to his field over the course of the year? What's the quality of the crop he's delivering? Has he violated any EUDR conventions? Let's pay him. That's all within a country. Of course, the outgrower needs to get cash. Often we'll need to bring cash from the US to pay for the crop that was delivered, but that happens at formal banking channels that work for that for the most part.
And my final question, Renen, is the competitor landscape. What does it look like for you?
It's a hard one. So we see a lot of guys in the who are pure play pharma digitization people around, and many of them are much better at that than we are. Often we find ourselves competing with those sort of guys. Our cup of tea is not that. We are about making sure that the financial transactions are managed coherently and that the process over the season works itself out. So ERP rather than pharma digitization. If I was to identify competitors, it would be the guys who solve a specific problem, the EUDR compliance problem. The difficulty is that many people get on board with the digitization problem, and it doesn't take them the whole way. So we work with those guys a lot to provide the financial backends to drive things forward. So that's perhaps if I was to flag competitors, it would be that the existing systems and processes. So people are already growing and have been growing cotton for a long time. They've got pieces of paper, they've got invoices, they've got Excel spreadsheets that they use to manage those processes. That's the other obvious counterpoint to what we do. If you want to grow beyond that, if you want to do the traceability stuff properly, if you've got a substantial number of farmers, we can make a real difference. Of course, people already have people doing these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Renen, I've enjoyed our conversation.
Exciting to be here.
Sorry?
It's very exciting to be here. So thank you for having me.
It's the work that you're doing is very impactful. Thanks for going beyond the board with us. I will leave links in the show notes below to find more about SASA and what they do. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Board. I am Ala. I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.